Hey everybody, before this video starts, I just wanted to say thanks a lot for 100 subscribers. Really appreciate it. I'll definitely keep making content since you guys seem to enjoy it, and my audience is getting slightly bigger as well. And also, a lot of people have been asking, the Blossom Haze review is coming soon, and also I will be reviewing non-mythic items as well, but in the future I won't just be locked to mythics, promise. That's about it. Enjoy the video. Recently I've been giving a lot of love to Assassin and Archer Mythics and reviewing them a ton. But I feel like Mage Mythics and also Shaman Mythics haven't gotten enough attention. So today I kind of want to change that. I am reviewing Singularity. It's definitely one of the strongest ones in the meta currently. Up there with Fatal. I think those are the strong two, Singu and Fatal. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into the review. So, first off, you can see that Singularity is the Rainbow Mythic for Mage. And it's the first Rainbow Mythic I've covered on the channel, but I feel like it's one of the more interesting ones. There are some boring Rainbow Mythics. Anyway, so Singularity, its main stat is Dexterity, or since every single Rainbow Mythic's got the gimmick of one single element being more prominent than others. Singu's is Dexterity, and it's got 60 of it, which is quite a significant damage boost if you think about it. Singularity's most relevant stats on the item are definitely its raw spell damage and its negative walk speed. The negative walk speed is important because in the footage, who isn't the best mage main in my opinion, was kind of struggling with some of the LI bosses because of the reduced mobility, so it's a very important stat on Singu. And the second one is spell damage, and here's why. The way raw spell works is that its damage is multiplied by the spell multiplier whatever spell has. So for example, take Meteor. It's got the 500% spell multiplier, which is one of the biggest in the game, meaning that whatever raw spell you have on Singu is multiplied by 5, and that's the damage it actually adds. So with a maximum raw spell Singularity, you get an additional 1950 damage. Contrast that to the minimum raw spell damage Singu, and that's only an additional 450 damage. So the difference between a minimum raw spell and a maximum raw spell roll on Singu is about 1500 extra damage, which even though you do about 20 to 22k meteors depending on your build, that's quite a lot of extra damage you still get. It's nothing to be scoffed at, and that's why it's one of the most relevant stats on Singu. Singu's also got a couple extra stats that matter, like the spell damage percentage, and depending on the build, maybe also main attack raw damage. But melee Singu isn't as prominent as spell Singu currently. Now, with maybe the exception of the negative walk speed, none of the stats on Singu have been really too insane. It's been pretty tame thus far. But some of you probably are already screaming at me as to why I haven't covered it yet, but I'm going to talk about it now. So, Singularity's got the most powder slots on any item in the game. It's got 15 powder slots. So, Singularity's base damage is actually pretty low without powdering it, but when you add the powder slots, it does some really high damage, like upwards 22k meters, as I said. The most optimal way to powder Singu is with a fire powder, then 13 thunder powders, and then finishing off with a fire powder. Alternatively, you can swap them to, say, a water powder if you want curse, but personally I prefer courage instead. The reason you want thunder powders on Singularity is because thunder powders add the most extra base damage out of any of the powders. The two fire or water powders are just there for the elemental powder effect, which is curse and courage, which obviously are way better than chain lightning. Gameplay section, I usually like to talk about how the weapon feels to play. So, first of all, I just want to give a disclaimer. I generally consider myself a fairly good assassin player as well as a pretty experienced archer and warrior player. But if there's two classes I kind of suck ass with, it's ironically the two easiest classes, shaman and mage, especially mage. So anything I say in this part of the video may be kind of done differently by way better Singularity users. But without further ado, I just kind of want to say that Singularity is not the easiest mythic to use, even for mage standards. Like for mage standards, Singularity is one of the higher skill cap mage mythics, and here's kind of why. The walk speed on Singularity is actually pretty brutal. I kind of tended to get hit quite a ton in Legendary Island because of the negative walk speed and just the reduced mobility. I had to kind of use teleport quite a lot, which as a fairly mage player, I actually kind of got really confused and it just felt kind of janky to me. In the middle of the recording, I actually had to swap to a better walk speed Singularity, so that's how bad the whole walk speed thing got. Now, I was doing this testing in Legendary Island where basically all bosses had crowd control immunity, and that also meant that they were just walking around and I couldn't stun them with Ice Snake, which could have definitely helped a ton. So, in general, I feel like Singularity's gameplay, or Singularity does way better in bosses like the Eye or the Canyon Colossus, where you really don't have to move as much, and the boss doesn't move either. But then if you get to something like Ally, you better be a slightly more experienced mage player to use it efficiently. Because Singularity is a rainbow mythic, there's not really 2 or 3 different tri-element archetypes that shine well with Singularity, but there are 2 different playstyles. I think the most optimal currently is just generic spell spam rainbow with mana regen, and that's what I'm using in the footage I recorded. But there's an alternative build style for Singularity being tier stack. You can, because Singularity is super slow, you can tier stack it with stuff like Centipede to actually make it do pretty good DPS, and I think it is a better option, ironically, than Gaia, the intended melee mythic for mage. I mean, Gaia is really sad at the moment, but you know, what can you do? I wouldn't really recommend using it, but it's not horrid at all, it's not stupidly bad or at all, so if you really want to try melee mage, then go ahead, try Singularity melee, it's pretty cool. To conclude, I think Singularity is definitely one of the most strong mage mythics, I think tied in power with Fatal, which I'll review eventually. It's one of the more gimmicky rainbow mythics, which you don't usually see in rainbow mythics, freedom, but it's definitely still fun to use. That's about it, I guess. Thanks for watching. Make sure to leave like, subscribe, and also leave a comment. I do read all comments as always, and I would like to hear suggestions from people for what weapons I should review next. That's about it. Thanks for watching. See ya.